Hello and welcome to Default Assault, where we take on everything by default. I am your host, Demosthenes, and today is a very special episode. We have a special guest star, but first, let's introduce you to our regular co-host, the awesome Mr. Kyle Nash. How's it going, Kyle?
Yeah, let's bring the sidekick in just so we can get that mess over with.
Let's okay. Now that he's spoken, let's get to the big guest star.
Yeah.
We have Big TJ on today from Bearded Wisdom. How's it going, TJ?
Feeling good, man. Feeling fresh. Glad to be in a place. And, I mean, because I can look across and see Kyle Nash, I mean, it's just, I extremely wet over here, man. I'm just glad to be here. Thank you.
Well, we're glad to have you with us, especially for our special episode today where we will be discussing The Fifth Element. In honor of Luc Besson's upcoming Valerian and the City of the Thousand Planets, we decided, hey, let's take a look at his previous sci-fi classic, The Fifth Element, and decide, is it up there with the sci-fi classic pantheon? Is it required viewing? So before we delve into it, I wanted to kind of check with you guys. Before you saw the film for the first time, what were your impressions? What did you hear anything about it? Was it built up? Like for me, my very first impression, unfortunately, it was the worst first impression ever. I was flipping through the channels, and I happened to flip on during the Chris Tucker scene, where suddenly the screen lights up with a man with a phallic shaped haircut, and I'm like, what the hell is this? And I flipped on. Now, had I flipped on during the thermal bandages scene, I would have watched the whole darn thing through. But then, of course, I did watch it, and I enjoyed the hell out of it. I was a little familiar with the leap off the skyscraper through the city traffic. I had seen that scene. I never put two and two together until I watched the film. I really enjoyed it. But TJ, what were your first impressions?
Well, my first impressions are unique because, see, you were flipping channels and you stumbled upon it. I was actually led to Fifth Element by my church. It was on a church trip, the weekend that it came out. So I didn't know what to expect going in, but I can tell you after watching that movie, one, I knew I was a man afterwards, and then two, you know, I knew that I had grown up and could start to respect some of that adult humor. So, you know, that was, you know, me and my first impression, and now as an adult, awesome. I'm gonna get further into it, you know, here in a little bit, but it's just, it's to me, it's great cinema. They've got the humor, they've got the action, they've got the actress before she became who she was, you know, handling business with the Resident Evil. So, I'm a big fan.
I have to say real quick that any church trip that involves, you know, church and boobies is a complete win.
Yeah.
A complete win as far as I'm concerned.
Can't be. They didn't know what they were doing, bro. First we go see Lion King, and then we go see The Fifth Element.
I forget which one, but I believe that's how one of the patron saints were canonized. So, I mean, I think we're onto something there.
It was a very holy experience.
Very.
Kyle, how about you?
You know, I even have a very unique perspective, a third direction, a third element possibly even here too. I hadn't seen it in the theater, and I wasn't flicking channels, but I had a boy with way back when I was first starting college over at UCF, and he and I were riding together all the time, mostly because at the time my leg was broken. He drove me everywhere. But the punchline is, you know, we'd had a lot of time during the summer. We watched a butt ton of movies. He goes, dude, you never saw this? Pops it in the VCR. Yes, I said VCR. And I had no idea what to expect, and I got something that was so much of everything you expect it to be, kind of a space epic odyssey thing, and it's that and so much more. It's got steampunk in there as well, so many different genres, if you will, and just a whole lot of different deep meaning. It doesn't go quite as deep as perhaps, let's say, like a Matrix, but it's close.
I would agree. It is, I mean, before we even delve further into the film, I have to point out it's had a lot of far-reaching influence. I sincerely doubt that TV series such as Farscape or even Guardians of the Galaxy would be the same if it wasn't for the influence of the Fifth Element. Hell, even in TJ, you mentioned a while back that you had only seen one of the Star Wars prequels. I'm curious, which one was it? Do you remember?
Sith, the last of the prequel.
All right, that's probably the best one to see. Funny enough, out of the prequel trilogy. But in the second film, there's a scene where Anakin literally does a very, very similar jump as portrayed in the Fifth Element, except without thermal bandages, which is probably a plus, because that's the last thing I personally would want to see.
It's nothing we want to see.
Yeah, Hayden Christensen is kind of a girl, but I don't think.
No.
So TJ, tell us some thoughts. What do you think of the film? Why is it special to you?
Well, besides the story and origin story for why I was able to see it, it had a lot of what I needed. You've got your leading man who's just attractive enough to get that audience, but he's not ridiculously handsome to the point to where I say this, because at a certain point when you get to a certain level of pretty, you just don't put that pretty in danger. So it's not like I'm saying that Bradley Cooper wouldn't try and save my life. I'm saying I'm glad he's Rocket and not, and not Star-Lord. So, you got Bruce Willis. I feel like he put his life on the line. We like seeing him in wife beaters anyway. So, check one there. He's in the dirty wife beater just like in Die Hard. But I mean, you have so much of everything. You've got aliens and people, walking amongst each other like it's commonplace. You have that futuristic, Total Recall, what's the future look like vibe going on, and then to see, all these awesome, things that they're doing, going on spaceships to go to these other planets. I mean, it's so much future stuff that you loved at the time that it came out, because they just wanted to be further away from where they were at the time. So, being able to see that stuff a la the Jetsons was really funky. And then the storyline to me was cool. Look, when you have Zeus as your president, anytime there's a black president, something bad's going to happen. The country is going to be at risk, or in this movie, the world is at risk. Morgan Freeman, Danny Glover. We know what's happening. There's a track record, and it started with Zeus. Zeus was that first, black president that just brought, destruction with him whenever he came through. So there's so many different things in this movie. And then obviously, like I said before, you got the girl. The girl is there. She doesn't know much English. She's not too top heavy, which is I'm a fan of, but it's all good. The thermal bandages still made her look at, and she was dirty, so she's jumping in cabs. McDonald's was popped around in there. I mean, product placement was all over the place. I'm all over the place.
Yeah, but at least in this particular term, the product placement was still something unique. It was still something funny. It wasn't like Krispy Kreme. I don't know if you saw the recent Power Rangers movie. If you haven't, you're not missing anything.
Yes.
But the entire
the
entire plot was about it was a dirty, gritty Krispy Kreme movie.
Which probably sounds like something you should never look up on Urban Dictionary, for the record.
Please don't. I cannot imagine. For me, Fifth Element, there are many, pun intended elements I do enjoy about the film, but for me, the one thing that really does stand out about it is there's a very distinct rhythmic flow throughout the film. It's like currently just from the opening scene, it just pulls you right in, and there's a cadence to it. It's very unique in that own style. Kyle, what do you think?
There's a lot going on there that I want to kind of take from both of you too. He mentioned TJ, of course, the futuristic aspects. There's social implications too, and something that even holds up nowadays. Even the whole corporations be up there being all in the way and manipulating things, the government, what they're doing, and the most subtle statement that's in there, it's like it's one word, or excuse me, 3 words of dialogue, and it's when Zorg's minion comes over to go find Vito Cornelius, the priest, He knocks on the door, opens it, sees the three guys standing there that are all Zorg's henchmen, and goes, "Weddings?" And they respond, "Not really." Like, the princess just asked these three dudes if there's a wedding involved. The implications in there of what the future looks like socially, too, were even touched upon, and that would certainly hold up today as well.
I think a lot of it is, you know, you mentioned a little bit of the style. It is, strangely enough, it is kind of a very goofy film. There's a lot of kind of goofy humor going on, and it works. I mean, sometimes it's a little over the top for my taste, but for the most part, it works. There's a sense of fun to the movie that's kind of missing in a lot of films nowadays, I feel.
I know. See, I was going Jean-Baptiste Emmanuel Zorg on you. Did you catch that, Demos?
Yes. Thank you, Kyle. You've enlightened us all.
Jean-Baptiste Emmanuel Zorg is the futuristic white Gustavo Fring. I said it. What?
Well, I'm kind of curious, because if we're going to be determining if it's required viewing, I have to ask the question, is there anything you don't like about the film?
It's montage heavy is what I'll say, and there's one or two that don't fit just quite right. I'm not here to say it's bad. There's just some things I'm like, not quite. Now, Demos, you mentioned the movie is rhythmic, and during I don't know that you would call it the climax scene, but the build into Act 3, where in the background of the Lady Plava Laguna, the Diva Plava Laguna singing, the fight goes on with the Mangalores, and Lilu's trying to protect the crystals, and all this other stuff's going on. That montage is proof alone. I could show you that segment and show you precisely how rhythmic this movie is. Then I could show you a different montage in the form of the montage where they're getting aboard the plane to fly the Fhloston Paradise, and you know all the different things are going on where Vito Cornelius is trying to stow away, Corbin Dallas is trying to get aboard the plane, Ruby Rod's trying to hook up with this chick. There's just it didn't land the way it should have, I think. And
but
of course, if you
I should say real quick on that particular montage, any film that's able to get away with a single scene having A, conolingus, and B, Jamaican pest control, that's an achievement.
I did not expect Demos to be the one walking out of here with the line of the night, but right now he's in the lead with that. Holy shit. Oh.
How about you, TJ? What is there? What are the flaws that you think that the Fifth Element might have?
No, first off, I definitely was going to make sure I brought up the cunnilingus, man. You can't not like that scene. I mean, it's showing how everybody, comes together, for this massive, they don't know that they're coming together for, the humanities, they're coming together for, a mission to save humanity, and they don't even know. So you got one that's just, laying down. You got one that's trying to stow away, and then Chris Tucker, who on this beard, man. I mean, so no, I got nothing but, respect for that scene. But as far as like stuff that I didn't like, I can't really point out anything that I thought didn't belong in the movie. I think that even the goofy stuff where you say that was a little over top, I think it all fit.
Yeah.
It's like one of those things where you say it's so bad it works, or you're talking about a plan. This is just crazy enough to work. So I think the writers and when they're putting all this stuff together and putting it in order, I say, you know what, this is just crazy enough to work. Where they even the flashback at the beginning where they're talking about the build up and what's coming. When I was younger, I didn't necessarily appreciate it, but as a cinephile now, it helped tell the story. This is how far back the relationship between this alien race and humanity goes. It goes back, deep. So now, when we are in this futuristic, call it a wasteland because of all the trash they have, that relationship is still very important. So I can't say that there was any part that I could have just cut out and still been excited about the film.
No, and well, to add to that, TJ, it's always nice to see Luke Perry find a way to get some work, even if it is for 30 seconds. You know, I'll throw that out there. Which
Got to give it to him.
I would also be
more light.
Yeah, exactly. Aziz, lie.
Every time I watch The Fifth Element, and I see the credits and Luke Perry, I'm always like, oh yeah, he's in this. What the hell?
Yeah, it's great.
It's like a plot twist in the credits.
You know, as TJ's pointing out that everybody's coming together towards the climax while talking about a scene in Cunnilingus, I think that speaks for itself.
No argument there. So on this basis, is it required viewing? Is this a film that everybody should see? TJ, what do you think?
I think it is. I think it is because not only are we talking about some good acting for reasons that I've talked about already, with Bruce Willis being that attractive leading man, but not too attractive to where it's not realistic. You have that up and coming star, the lead actress, and I can't properly pronounce her first name, so
Mila
I'm not going to make myself look like
yeah.
I have you.
I can never pronounce it myself.
No, it's perfectly fine, but ultimately I wanted to say that part, have you say her name while I'm mouthing it, going as if it's like seamless. So without a failed attempt, I'll say, you know, having her, you know, be that up and comer and seeing what she has become. I think now, if you were to watch it, say you're a millennial, you've never seen it, if you were to watch it now, I think you would like it just because of how quote unquote retro it's trying to be, you know, because of it's a product of the time that we were in then. You know, for me, it's like, let's put it in the time capsule, because where we were at that particular time and that year, that's what we needed. And that's what, you know, the directors and writers were putting together back then. I'm talking just bigger on a movie scale, just the what we were doing then type of situation.
Especially for a film from 1997, the effects really hold up well, and it's because they're all practical. You know, it's there's no overuse of CG. Nothing seems cartoony or elastic. You know, which is a feeling I get from a lot of sci-fi movies nowadays. It's like I'm watching, you know, a better rendered Toy Story, but they're still toys. And I mean, there was actually, I take it back. There was a little bit of CGI in there, but it was well done. I'm thinking specifically of the scene where they build her from her remaining alien body. There was some CG there, but it was layered very well. It wasn't distracting.
Well, I mean, other than the thermal bandages, right, Demos?
Well, that was well-intentioned. Well-intentioned.
TJ's face lit up with a smile when I dropped that. It was awesome.
So, Kyle, do you think it's required viewing?
You know, it's interesting, and I've actually toiled with this the past few days leading up to this show. Demos and I were doing pre-production on Monday, and I still didn't have an answer then. Here's what I'll say so far, is I don't have an argument against it not being so at this point. So by default, you know, you'd think that had something to do with the title of this episode, I have to kind of say it is. But what's interesting is I have a completely different spin on it. One might even say the opposite spin is Big TJ. Look, my man Tokeo J's doing his thing saying it was what we needed at the time. I'm telling you, I think it's required reading because it still stands up 20 years later. It doesn't have to be its own thing. Look, can we be honest? The whole semi-handsome leading man thing, Bruce Willis is that guy for the past 30 years, okay? You know, now granted, the final two Die Hard movies were a complete waste of time, and one could argue that that's true of the second, but that's a different show. The punchline being this, you had a whole lot of else going on in that movie that was even bigger than Bruce Willis, that was speaking to, oh, by the way, another big actor of a time, you know, a corporate leader who doesn't look menacing, but could end you in the form of my man Gary Oldman, okay? It's that simple. You had the quirky comic relief stepping in there, Vito Cornelius and his aide, I forget his name off the bat, but the punchline being, the last time we talked about somebody named Beto on this show, he wasn't no bumbling fool. And if I go to church, I would have someone to answer to. It's that simple. But look, the point I can't get, but it checks all the boxes. It stands the test of time. It's still relevant now. The tech even holds up now after 20 years. And the only things that might be stretchy or look weird are the things that's supposed to, in the form of the Mangalores and all their, it takes a couple beats to actually figure out what their voices are doing. But you get that, you figure that out by the end of the movie. I definitely dug the Monochiwan, the opening race that actually holds all the ancient secrets. Note how robotic they are. Are they hinting at the singularity there with AI being a thing and it actually going semi-well? I don't know. But, all that is still going on. That's the first time I had that thought. And I've been a fan of this movie, having it buried between my top 3 and top 5 and even the top spot for me throughout those 20 years.
Wow. So
I have to say yes.
I'm a little bit more mixed. I think it's a very good movie. There are a lot of things that work for it. Like we've all pretty much discussed, the visuals are astonishing. The rhythmic and editing flow throughout the film I think is fantastic. Like I said, it has a current. It pulls you in. It's very much an experience film. The plot itself, really, when you take a step back, the plot itself isn't mind-blowing. It's not something. It was not the most unique thing ever, but the film is an experience. Everybody's having fun, and you're invited for the party. So overall, I mean, but there are a couple of things I think are a little over the top, goofy.
You're goofy.
But I would say, I don't know if well, I have that on my business card. It's fantastic. But I would say, I don't know if I'd go so far as to say it's required viewing, but it would definitely be a recommendation.
But let me add this caveat, Demos, because I totally see where you're going. But when you say required viewing, I'm thinking for everybody. If you consider yourself any bit of a sci-fi file, this is required reading. If you do anything related to modern scores and soundtracks in movies, if you don't have this thing on your list, I almost said mofo. I don't know. I don't want to make you do extra work by bleeping me out. But if you don't have, I'm going to say it anyway. You don't have this motherfucker on your list. If you're a music file, you are doing it wrong. Period. The whole artificial singing Plava Laguna stuff is intense and insane and gorgeous all at the same time. Look, I'm a huge man. You've seen it on film. And Grace said bye-bye to me a long time ago. So maybe when I see something that graceful, it speaks to me a little deeper because I know I could never be capable of doing it. But from those two...
Couldn't.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, no hate. That's why I block some people to do it for me. But no, but those two things, if you're in those two subsets, you have to see it. It is required reading for you.
I will give you that. If you're a sci-fi fan, it is required viewing. I would even say if you're a comic book fan, it's required viewing because there are a lot of intersecting passions there. Because you mentioned the music, I have to throw out this bit of trivia because it's me. But the composer of the score, Eric Serra, is also kind of notorious for doing the score, only one score for the James Bond films, GoldenEye. Go back, listen to the Fifth Element score, and then listen to the GoldenEye score, and you'll find some very strange but enjoyable similarities between the two scores. And then go back and watch GoldenEye and think of the Fifth Element while you're doing so.
So it's not required reading, but it is required listening, according to Demosthenes Euclid.
I'm having a hard time.
Hard time.
So, all right. So I'm having all right. So, Demos, you say not necessarily required reading, but it's a recommendation.
Yes.
I'm with you. Kyle Nash, you're with me. Required reading. I'm saying it's a prerequisite because it checks so many of the boxes. If you're a sci-fi nut, if you're a sci-fi nut, you had to have seen it. If you're a Bruce Willis fan, you have to have seen it. Like there's so many boxes that it checks.
If you like Chris Tucker,
if you are If you like, seriously, and that's where I was about to go. If you like Chris Tucker, this is one of his better movies because it showed his range.
Mhm.
Gary Oldman, you have to. This is a movie that you want to watch. I mean, come on. I mean, that's serious black we're talking about, folks. There are so many boxes that this movie checks. I feel like so many different people. It's not just sci-fi guys. It's not just comedy people. You know, it covers so many people that I think it deserves another consideration, Demos. I think you got to give it one more smell, bro. One more smell.
I will tell you this. I will say one thing in agreement with your point. This is the one film ever made where Chris Tucker is 130% in line with the universe. If I were to visit the world of the Fifth Element, I would expect to see somebody like Chris Tucker there. I would be disappointed if he wasn't. But overall, it's mostly the plot. I think isn't exactly the strongest element of the film, and some of the goofy scenes kind of take away from the impact, I believe. But like I said, I consider it a good film. On my side, I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, which is very, very much a recommendation. I just don't rank it up there with like the classics that I would definitely say are required viewing. Films like The Godfather or Raiders of the Lost Ark. So I'm just looking at this in a much more critical light, is what I'm saying. It's just my point of view.
So based on that spiel, though, Chief, what I heard, because this movie's officially 20 years old, okay? And by our measure, 20 years have passed. We could start having the conversation about whether or not it's a classic. Now, a classic doesn't necessarily require reading, okay? But I just heard you say that it's not a classic either.
Well, it depends on your definition of classic. You're going by age. I'm going from
pre-read.
Yeah. So it's 2 different ways to look at it. So, but you know what? At the same time, I'm outvoted 2 versus 1. We have to determine it is required viewing.
And unite what?
That's not how I wanted to win, but I'll take it. You know, every once in a while you get a $5 girl. It's okay.
Hey.
Well, thank you very, very much. I will say this. For connoisseurs of bandages, this is your film. Bandages have never been more uniquely or sexually displayed in cinematic history. It should win. It should win an Oscar just on that. Best costume design.
On that note, why the hell hasn't Band-Aid come out yet with Fifth Element bandages? All right, I scrape myself up. I want Corbin Dallas on my damn bandage. What about it?
True.
They would have to be bright orange bandages to match his wife beater.
I'm fine with that, man. Give me Ruby Ride, bro. Let me get my knee brace with Ruby Ride all day.
My man's on it right there. Get that leopard skin going. Hell yeah.
You know the original, Ruby Rod's original name in the screenplay, if I remember correctly, was Lockrod, and they changed it for some strange reason. I think they made the wise choice there.
I think he lends himself more to a Ruby.
You can take that one of 2 various directions.
For example, that's what she said.
Well, on that note, on that note, that concludes this episode of Default Assault. TJ, thanks so much for joining us. Please, man, join us again. It was a lot of fun. I loved hearing your insights on the Fifth Element. And we're definitely going to be open. Let us know in the comments below. Tell us, what films do you believe should be required viewing? Like and subscribe, turn on the notifications, and follow me on Twitter at Default Hilarity, Facebook Hilarity by Default, and of course, our website, hilaritybydefault.com. TJ, where can we find you?
On Twitter at Tokeo J. That's TOKEO J. That's Twitter and Snap. Find me, follow me. I'm fun, friendly.
Yes, definitely check out Bearded Wisdom. It's a fun show.
You know, you can check him out, Tokyo J on Snap. And oh snap is what you'll say every time my man. It's that simple.
And Kyle, where can we find you?
Of course, I'm Kyle Nash, the student of the game. You can find me on Twitter at the SOTG, and of course on Facebook as the student of the game.
Sweet. Well, with that said, we'll see you next time by default.